This all happened about 6 months ago when we returned to school after the summer break. It was the first day back and I was late because of traffic. Once I arrived, I parked and then ran towards my first class. I met all my friends and luckily my teacher wasn't there yet. While we were talking about the summer and things we did, we heard the principal's voice come over the loudspeaker. He notified everyone that the school was on lockdown as of right now. He also advised that all students are to report to their first period classrooms immediately. Our school had encountered some criminal activities before in the past, so our principal and teachers had suggested doing lockdown drills. We thought that this was going to be one of those practice drills, but from the sound of his voice, we could tell it wasn't. After we heard him screaming "hurry" over the loudspeaker in a panicked voice, we locked all the windows in the door and turned off all the lights. We were trembling while a few girls were crying. We didn't hear anything for about 45 minutes, but we were in contact with the other students from different classrooms through our cell phones. I knew we were supposed to stay put until we heard from the principal or a teacher, but we were trying to think of a way to leave. Suddenly we heard the sound of police car sirens. We could hear them down on the first floor of the school searching for the intruders. And our classroom was up on the third floor. Two of my friends texted me and told me that there were 3 armed gunmen somewhere in the school. Some of the students started panicking and one of the boys went to open the door, but I intervened and stopped him. After a few minutes we heard some screams and then men's voices followed by footsteps approaching at the end of the hallway of our floor. My friend ran to put some tables in front of the door, but I told him to stay still and not to make any noise, otherwise they'd know we're in here. By this time we could hear the men banging on the door of the next classroom down the hall from ours. We could hear them screaming, "Open up right now or you'll be sorry." Luckily there were no kids in that classroom, which was good, but the thing that made us all even more scared was that our classroom was next. The intruders were banging really hard on that door, but then after a few minutes there was complete silence. We couldn't see them, we could only hear what was going on. We figured our classroom was next, but maybe we had gotten very lucky and they had just moved on. As we listened intently, all of a sudden we heard banging on our door. We could see one of the men trying to force open the lock. I heard one of them say, "I think there are some in here." While they started banging on our door, it was even more frightening because of how much louder it was. We still continued to stay put and didn't open the door. Suddenly there was complete silence again. After about 5 minutes, my friend said, "I think they're gone, maybe we should go look." I told him that I don't think so and that it could be a trick. We waited for a few more minutes in complete silence, and then suddenly the banging on the door started again, and we heard them say, "We know you're in there." At this point they were able to break the glass and reach in and turn on the light switch. The door was slowly starting to give away. They could see us now, but we were in the opposite far corner of the room behind tables and chairs. I didn't know what else to do, so I just yelled out, "The police are already here looking for you." As they continued to ram the door and it looked like it was ready to let go, all of a sudden we heard, "Freeze! Police! Drop your weapons and put your hands up!" The 3 masked intruders gave up without a fight and were arrested and taken away. We were so relieved and happy that when the police officers came into the room, we hugged and thanked them. This happened a couple of years ago when I was at school and when I was in the boys' bathroom. I was washing my hands and making sure my hair looked good. After a few minutes, I saw a boy run into the bathroom and he locked himself in one of the toilet stalls. The boy looked to be about the same age as me, but I had never seen him before and I thought I knew everyone at school, but I guess I didn't. He was crying, so I walked over to the stall door and asked him if he was okay, but he didn't respond. After a few seconds, I tried again and knocked on the door and asked if he was okay and if there was anything I could do to help him, but he just kept on crying. It was hard for me not to be able to help him. I knocked at the door one more time and this time he opened it. His eyes were red and there was blood running down from both his eyes and his nose. I didn't understand what was going on with him. I asked, "Are you all right?" He said, "I don't know what's happening to me. Please help." I said, "Okay, hold on a second." I took out my cell phone and tried to call my friend. At about the same time, I heard the principal making an announcement over the loudspeaker saying that the school is now in lockdown and that it isn't a drill and to please go to the nearest classroom and lock the doors and windows. He also said, "Do not let anyone come into the classroom whose nose or eyes are bleeding." I was confused because the boy I was trying to help had the same thing happening to him. Once he heard this, he ran out of the bathroom, so I went after him. And as I was chasing him and saying, "Wait, where are you going?" I saw the most awful thing that I think I could have ever seen. He basically turned into something other than a boy and grabbed a student who was trying to get into a classroom and bit her on the side of the face. At this point, I was at a loss for words and felt like I was about to throw up. He looked at me with those creepy red eyes and blood on his mouth. As he or it stood up, I began to run and went to a nearby classroom. The classroom I ran into was empty and I was the only one in there, so I locked the door. The door had a little glass window on it to look outside. I saw the animal, or whatever it was, coming towards my door slowly. It was walking strangely and appeared like it had no strength to move and was covered in that student's blood. It started banging on the door and was making weird, creepy noises that freaked me out. At this point, I kept saying to myself, "This is a dream. You're dreaming. You're going to wake up at any minute now." I quickly started searching for my phone in my pocket, but must have dropped it earlier in all the commotion because I couldn't find it. I thought to myself, "Oh God, what should I do now?" Then I started yelling for help. As it was banging on the door, there was a girl that came around the corner and it saw her and started chasing her as she ran away down the hallway. I was horrified to see this, but once it was out of sight, I opened the door and luckily saw my phone on the floor on the side of the corridor. Luckily, it was still intact and didn't break when I dropped it. I picked it up, and just as I was dialing for help, I saw it coming back around the corner. I went to run back into the classroom, but it was too quick and beat me to the door before I could close and lock it. It came into the classroom and had me cornered. I saw a broom, so I picked it up, and as it came at me, I jammed the handle end of the broom into its mouth, which I have to admit was pretty lucky on my part because I didn't think it would hurt it. The handle went to the back of its throat and it started choking. It seemed to slow it down, but then it recovered and started coming at me again, with even more rage and fury. Just as it reached me, I heard a loud bell go off and I suddenly woke up and realized I had dozed off in my social studies class. All the other kids were getting ready to go to next period. I kind of giggled to myself because I had fallen asleep in class, but had also thought that that dream seemed so real. One day last year I was at school and me and a few of my friends were playing Truth or Dare at lunchtime. While we were playing, I dared my friend Steve to go down to the basement of the school. The principal had set the basements off limits and no one was ever allowed to go down there, and it's always been that way for years or ever since I can remember. We had heard that it was haunted, but that was just a rumor, or so we believed. Because of this rumor is the reason why we always dared each other to go down there. Well, this time when we were playing, after we dared him to go down there, we decided to scare him. As he was making his way down to the basement, we quietly followed him, but he didn't know. He was supposed to bring something back from the basement to show that he went all the way. Once he finished looking, he ended up finding an old, dusty, oily tan pair of gloves that looked like they were used to service the furnace. As he was on his way back, we all jumped out and scared the hell out of him. He screamed and fell back, and while we were laughing our heads off, he realized he had fallen back on some big, heavy black plastic garbage bags. They looked like there were about 5 of them, and once we investigated, we started to smell a horrid odor. We looked inside and found that there were human body parts inside the bags. The girls screamed and started running back upstairs, and the boys immediately followed. As soon as we all got back up to the main floor, we ran straight to the principal's office. We told him everything that happened, and he immediately announced a school lockdown over the loudspeaker. We asked him what he thinks is going on, and he said that there may be an intruder inside the school, and he didn't want to take any chances. He called the police, and they came right away. He asked us to sit and wait in his office and said that he was going to go with the police while they searched. When he left the office, he locked the door so no one could get in, and he said he'd be back shortly. The principal's office had a glass window in the door so we could see everything that was happening out in the hallway. There must have been about 15 police officers that came to the school to help, and all the students were inside their respective classrooms that were locked. The principal came back shortly after and made another announcement over the loudspeaker. He said that the situation was worse than he had thought and that he'll have to increase the lockdown time and that he'd update us as soon as possible. Once he hung up from the loudspeaker, he told us that more bodies were found down in the basement. I couldn't believe what was happening. This felt like a horror movie and we were right in the middle of it. After the principal made the second announcement, we asked him what we should do, and he said, "Stay right here in my office and don't move." He made sure to close and lock the door when he left for the second time. I knew that I had to stay alert, so I was intently watching out the door window. I could see all the policemen walking up and down the hallways, looking in closets and anywhere someone could hide. My heart was beating fast because I had never had anything like this happen to me before. I didn't know why, but I was getting this really negative vibe about being locked in the principal's office. The office was small and there were about 6 of us in there, but I was still getting an eerie feeling. I looked around for something just to have it in my hand and found a letter opener on the desk to use as a weapon if needed. As we were sitting there waiting, I noticed that the principal's office had a shaft that was in the wall at the side of the room, and it connected all the floors. I guess it was there because of how old the building was. While we were all sitting there waiting, I heard a noise come from the inside of the shaft. I asked my friends if they had heard it, and they said, "Heard what?" I said, "That noise, did you hear it?" And one of them said, "Will you stop joking around? We're in the middle of something dangerous here." I walked over closer to the shaft to listen, and then suddenly the door on it lifted and this guy with a mask jumped out. He was obviously the guy everyone was looking for. Without hesitation, and because of the fact that I was right next to him, I jabbed the letter opener at him and stabbed him in the arm, and he started bleeding. Out of initial reaction, the guys that were with me started punching and kicking him too. The girls started screaming at the top of their lungs and also started punching and kicking him as well. Unbelievably, we knocked him to the floor and basically had him trapped. After my friend subdued him and we were holding him down, I unlocked the office door and called a policeman for help. He rushed in with 3 other policemen, and then eventually the principal came back. The killer was moved out into the hallway on the floor and handcuffed and arrested, then taken away. Later on, we learned that he had planned to abduct students one at a time, so it's lucky that we stumbled across what we did, otherwise he'd still be out committing crimes. The police officer told us that he is mentally unstable, which was no surprise to us. Thank God it's over.